The Forgotten Village Chapter 1. The arrival the road was barely visible. A thin strip of cracked asphalt winding through the dense fog like a serpent slipping silently through the underbrush. Jason flicked the high beams on, but the light seemed to be swallowed whole by the impenetrable mist that enveloped the car. Beside him, Tara shivered, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "It's like the fog is alive, trying to keep us out," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason nodded, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. "Yeah, well, it's not doing a great job. We're almost there." The GPS had stopped giving directions 20 minutes ago, leaving them to rely on an old map they'd found tucked in the glove compartment of their rental car. According to the crinkled paper, they were close to their destination, a forgotten village called Elmswood. Tucked away in the heart of the forest as they rounded a particularly sharp bend, the car headlights caught something, a figure standing in the middle of the road. Jason slammed on the brakes, heart hammering in his chest as the figure slowly turned toward them. It was a girl, no older than 8 or 9, clad in a white, waterlogged dress that clung to her skin. Her hair was plastered to her face, and her eyes, 2 dark pools, stared into theirs with an intensity that made Tara gasp. "What are you doing out here?" Jason yelled through the rolled-down window. The girl said nothing, only pointed toward the thick woods that flanked the road. "Should we call someone?" Tara asked, her voice shaky. Jason was about to answer when the girl vanished, as if swallowed by the night itself. They got out of the car, but there was no sign of her, no footprints on the wet ground. Shaken, they got back into the car and continued their journey, the silence between them heavy with unasked questions. When they finally arrived at Elmswood, it was nothing more than a collection of derelict houses huddled together, their windows dark and empty. No signs of life, no movement, nothing but the wind whispering through broken panes. They decided to stay at the old inn at the edge of the village, the only building that looked like it might still be habitable. The inn was a quaint, ivy-covered building with a crooked sign that read, "The Elmswood Rest." The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, stepping into a lobby coated with dust and draped in cobwebs. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and decay. As Jason rang the bell on the dusty counter, the sound echoed through the empty halls like a death knell. A figure emerged from the shadows, an old woman with a stooped back and a gaunt face. Her eyes were a pale blue, almost translucent, and when she spoke, her voice was a rasp. "Room for 2?" she asked, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Yes, please," Tara replied, trying not to show her discomfort. The woman handed them a key with a hand that trembled. "Second floor, room 7. Dinner at 7 if you're interested." They thanked her and headed upstairs, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. Room 7 was at the end of a long, dark hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and as Jason pushed it open, they were greeted by a gust of cold air. The room was simple: a double bed with a patchwork quilt, a wooden chair, and a small window that looked out over the village. As they unpacked, Tara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced toward the window, but the village was still, as if it had been deserted for decades. Chapter 2. The first night that night, they descended to the dining room, where they found the old woman setting a table for 2. The meal was surprisingly good, hearty stew and fresh bread, but the atmosphere was oppressive, the silence punctuated only by the crackling of the fire as they ate. Tara noticed a series of old photographs on the mantelpiece. They depicted the village in what seemed like a bygone era, with smiling villagers gathered around a large oak tree. But one photo caught her eye, a group of children, with the same girl they had seen on the road standing slightly apart from the others. She pointed it out to Jason, who frowned. "She looks exactly the same," he said, his voice low. They asked the old woman about the girl, but she merely shook her head. "Lots of children used to live here," was all she said, before quickly changing the subject. That night, as Tara lay in bed, the wind howled outside, a mournful, wailing sound that seemed almost human. She tried to sleep, but her dreams were troubled, filled with images of the girl and the whispering woods, and somewhere, deep in the heart of the forest, a dark secret waited, its roots buried deep in the soil of Elmswood. Chapter 3. Whispers in the woods. The following morning, Tara awoke to a thin veil of sunlight piercing through the grimy window, the light struggling against the gloom of Elmswood. She nudged Jason awake, her mind still haunted by the spectral visions of the night. Over a quiet breakfast of porridge and tea, they discussed their plan. "We need to understand what happened here," Jason said, determination lining his voice. "Maybe if we talk to some of the locals, we can figure out more about that girl and the curse." Tara nodded, her thoughts drifting back to the old photographs on the mantelpiece. "Let's start with the village center. There might be records or something at the town hall." Their investigation led them to a decrepit building at the heart of the village, its doors hanging off the hinges, the air thick with the scent of rotting wood. Inside, they found piles of old documents, dust-covered and moth-eaten, but it was a set of faded journals that caught their attention. They detailed the daily life in Elmswood, ending abruptly 50 years ago. The last entry was chilling. "The shadows grow longer, and the children are vanishing, one by one. We should never have crossed the woods. We've awoken something ancient, something angry." A chill ran down Tara's spine. "Jason, look at this," she whispered, handing him the journal. As he read, his face grew pale. "This is no ordinary ghost story. Something here is fundamentally wrong." They decided to visit the old oak tree seen in the photographs, located on the outskirts of the village. The tree stood alone in a clearing, its branches gnarled and twisted, reaching out like the fingers of a desperate witch. As they approached, the air grew inexplicably colder, and the silence deepened beneath the tree. They found toys and trinkets arranged in a circle, as if part of some forgotten ritual. The ground was soft, the grass around the tree oddly lush compared to the barrenness of the surrounding area. Tara bent down to examine a small, worn doll when the ground beneath her shifted. "Jason!" she cried out as the earth began to cave. He lunged forward, grabbing her hand just as she was about to fall into what appeared to be a hidden cellar. Pulling her up, they peered into the dark void below. "We need to see what's down there," Jason said, though his voice betrayed his fear. Using their phone lights, they descended into the darkness. The cellar was cramped and filled with ancient symbols scrawled across the walls. At the center, a large stone slab was inscribed with more runes and what looked disturbingly like dried blood. "It's a sacrificial altar," Tara breathed, the realization hitting her like a cold wave. The villagers were trying to appease whatever they thought they'd awoken. Suddenly, the whispers started, soft and insidious, curling around them like smoke. Tara clutched Jason's arm, her eyes wide with terror. The whispers grew louder, forming words in an ancient tongue. Then screams pierced the air, echoes of the past tormenting the present. They fled the cellar, the chilling sounds chasing them back into the daylight. Once safely away from the tree, they stopped, panting and shaken. "We need help," Jason stated, his usual skepticism gone, replaced by a primal fear. "We're dealing with something beyond our understanding." Chapter 4. Unraveling the curse. Determined to find answers, they returned to the inn to confront the old woman. This time, she was waiting for them, her expression grave. "You've been to the tree," she stated, not a question but a fact. "And you've heard them, haven't you?" Jason and Tara nodded, unable to hide their fear. "The curse you speak of," the old woman began slowly, "was born of greed and violence. The villagers found something in those woods, something old and powerful. They thought they could control it, use it for themselves. But it used them instead, turning their children into conduits for its return." "What can we do?" Tara asked, desperation in her voice. "To break the curse, you must return what was taken. Only then will the children rest. Only then will you be safe." The task was daunting, but Tara and Jason knew they had no choice. They needed to venture deeper into the woods, find the source of the curse, and confront the ancient force they had unwittingly unleashed. The journey ahead would be fraught with peril, but they were determined to end the nightmare, not just for themselves, but for the forgotten souls of Elmswood. Their adventure was far from over. It was only just beginning. Chapter 5. Into the heart of darkness, armed with only their flashlights and the cryptic advice from the old innkeeper, Jason and Tara set out as the sun began its slow descent behind the gnarled trees of Elmswood. The forest loomed before them, a tangled maze of shadow and whispers. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig underfoot seemed to carry weight, a silent warning. According to the journals, the villagers found something here, Jason said, scanning the map they had found among the archives. It was in a cave near the river that feeds into the lake. As they walked, Tara recalled the old photographs, the way the villagers had gathered around the tree, faces marked by fear yet bound by some unspeakable secret. Whatever they found, it changed this place, cursed it. Maybe they were trying to protect it, or protect themselves from it. The river was not hard to locate, its gurgling waters a stark contrast to the oppressive silence of the village. They followed it upstream until they reached a rocky outcrop. There, nestled between boulders, was the mouth of a cave, dark and inviting. The air grew colder as they entered, the beam from their flashlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating ancient cave paintings that adorned the walls, depictions of hunting, celestial bodies, and a dark, horned figure that seemed to watch over all. The entity the villagers found, Tara whispered, her voice echoing off the stone walls. They delved deeper into the cave, following a narrow passageway that twisted downwards. The ground became slippery, moist with the presence of unseen waters below. Suddenly, Tara's foot caught on a loose stone, and she stumbled, her flashlight clattering away into the darkness. "Are you okay?" Jason hurried to her side, helping her up. "I'm fine," she assured him, though her hands trembled. "We need to be careful." Without her flashlight, they shared Jason's, the singular beam now their only source of light. The passage opened into a larger cavern, where the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. In the center of the cavern, encased in what looked like a naturally formed pedestal of rock, was an object that pulsed with a soft, eerie light. "That must be it," Jason said, stepping closer. The object was a crystal, its facets glowing with a light that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically as they approached. The whispers returned, louder now, a cacophony of voices that filled the cavern. They weren't just echoes of the past. They were warnings, pleas, threats. The children, Tara realized, her eyes wide with horror. They're still here, bound to whatever this crystal is. Jason reached out, his hand hovering over the crystal. "We need to free them." The innkeeper said we had to return what was taken. "This is it. This is what they found." "No, Jason." Tara tried to stop him, but it was too late. His fingers brushed against the crystal, and a surge of energy shot through the cavern. The light exploded in intensity, blinding them, and the ground shook as if the earth itself were in agony. When the light dimmed, they found themselves no longer in the cavern but in a different place, a shadowy realm that existed between time and space. Ghostly figures of children roamed around, their eyes empty, their voices whispering endlessly. "We're trapped," Tara said, a note of panic in her voice. "Like the children were." Jason took her hand, squeezing it. "Not yet. We can still fix this. We have to reverse whatever the villagers did." Together, they approached the ghostly figures, speaking soothing words, promising to free them from their eternal torment. One by one, the children stopped, turning to look at them, their eyes beginning to show flickers of hope. Tara and Jason returned to the crystal, this time both placing their hands upon its surface. They focused on their desire to heal, to return what had been disturbed. The whispers crescendoed around them, becoming almost unbearable. Then, as suddenly as it had all begun, silence fell. The oppressive energy lifted, and they found themselves back in the cave, the crystal now a dull, lifeless rock. Outside, the forest seemed lighter, the air fresher. They made their way back to the village, the sun rising, casting long shadows behind them but also bathing Elmswood in a new, hopeful light. Chapter 6. Dawn of Elmswood. As they reached the village, they were met not by silence, but by the sounds of life. The innkeeper was waiting for them, a smile on her face. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with relief. "The curse is lifted." Jason and Tara looked around, noticing small signs of recovery. The grass seemed greener, the air clearer. And there, playing around the old oak tree, were the children from the photographs, real and alive, their laughter a music that filled the air. "You freed them," the innkeeper continued. "And in doing so, you've freed Elmswood." Tara felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the turn of events. "What now?" she asked, looking around at the peaceful village. "Now," the innkeeper said, gesturing to the brightening horizon, "we rebuild, and you are always welcome here." Jason and Tara exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. This adventure had changed them, shown them depths of darkness but also heights of hope as they prepared to leave Elmswood. They knew one thing for sure. While some journeys end, the stories that begin in such mysterious, enchanted places never really do. Elmswood would remain with them, a reminder of the darkness they overcame and the light they brought back into the world. Chapter 7. Echoes of Elmswood. As Tara and Jason prepared to leave the revived village of Elmswood, the sense of peace and resolution was palpable, yet an undercurrent of mystery lingered like the morning mist. The villagers, their faces alight with newfound hope, gathered to bid them farewell, their eyes reflecting deep gratitude. "We can never thank you enough," one of the elders said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You've given us back our future." As they drove away, the rearview mirror framed Elmswood fading into the backdrop of lush greenery, a stark contrast to the ghostly desolation they had first encountered. But as the distance grew, so did a nagging sensation in Tara's mind, a whisper of unfinished business. "Jason," Tara said, her voice breaking the comfortable silence, "do you feel like we've really ended it? Everything back there? It felt too easy." Jason glanced at her, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "I was thinking the same thing. The crystal, the curse lifting. It all resolved quickly once we understood what to do." Their conversation was interrupted by the car's radio suddenly crackling to life. Static filled the cabin before settling into a clear, chilling message. "Return what has been taken." The voice was ethereal, barely more than a whisper, yet unmistakably the same chorus of voices they'd heard in the cave. The message repeated, growing in urgency. Jason pulled over, the car coming to a stop at the side of the road. "That can't be a coincidence," he said, switching off the radio, which fell silent as if it had never been on. "Maybe we missed something," Tara suggested, her brow furrowed. "Or maybe we took something with us." They searched the car, looking for any physical object they might have unwittingly brought with them from Elmswood. Nothing. Then Tara paused, realization dawning. "Jason, the crystal. When we touched it, could it have transferred something to us? Some part of its energy or curse? That would explain the children's ghosts appearing in that other realm and why the entity let us go so easily," Jason reasoned. They knew they had to return to Elmswood, to seek answers and ensure the curse was truly broken. Chapter 8. The binding. Upon their return, Elmswood appeared as serene as they had left it, but the air now carried a subtle chill that hadn't been there before. They went straight to the inn, finding the old innkeeper by the fireplace. "We heard a message," Jason started without preamble, and explained what had happened. The innkeeper's eyes widened with a mix of fear and understanding. "The spirit of the forest, the essence we disturbed, it's not confined to the crystal. It's ancient, rooted deep in the land and perhaps in you now." "What can we do?" Tara asked, a sense of urgency pressing her. "You must bind it, not just appease it," the innkeeper explained. "To truly free Elmswood and yourselves, you must create a new covenant with the spirit." "How?" Jason was quick to follow up, his practical nature seeking tangible steps. "The original covenant was forged with sacrifices and rituals, but you need to offer something different. Something the spirit hasn't had before, recognition and respect, not fear and subjugation." They needed to perform a ritual, one that would acknowledge the spirit's rightful place in nature and pledge to preserve its sanctity. The villagers, now understanding the deeper layers of their history, came together to support Tara and Jason, bringing offerings of natural elements, stones, flowers, and water from the river. Under the guidance of the innkeeper, they arranged these elements in a circle around the old oak tree, the heart of the village. As dusk fell, Tara and Jason stood in the center, holding hands, and spoke aloud their promise to honor and protect the spirit's domain. The air shimmered as if in response, the atmosphere charged with an ancient power. A gentle wind rose, rustling through the leaves, carrying away the oppressive weight that had lingered over Elmswood. When the wind died down, the world was still once more, and a deep, resonant peace settled over the forest. Chapter 9. A new dawn. In the days that followed, Elmswood transformed. Flowers bloomed out of season, wildlife returned in abundance, and the river sang a brighter tune. The villagers adapted to their role as guardians of the land, their lives weaving into the fabric of natural magic around them. Tara and Jason prepared to leave once more, this time with light hearts and a clear conscience. They had not only uncovered the mysteries of Elmswood, but had also learned a profound lesson about the balance of nature and the human role within it. As they drove away, this time truly leaving Elmswood behind, Tara smiled, a contented, knowing smile. "Sometimes, the journey chooses us," she said, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "And sometimes," Jason added, "it teaches us where we really belong." Elmswood, now a whisper of the past but alive in every true sense, continued to thrive, a testament to the power of respect and reconciliation between humans and the mystical forces of nature.